Hi everyone, Isadora here. Are you a journal person? I mean, do you journal like in a diary? If you're anything like me, you probably have dozens of journals lying on your night table. But how often do you read them again? I used to read my journals over a lot until I realized that it wasn't doing me any good. See, I was journaling a lot about the wrong things in my life, about what was not going the way I wanted it to. So reading my journals over was more like a journey back to painful memories. So I decided to transform one of my journals into an art journal, but to do it in a way where I would not block out the word, only adding a veil of transparency on them. And let me show you how you can do that using a gel resist technique. Let's crack on.
I have been journaling for as long as I can remember. Even when I was a little girl, up till now, I have filled dozens and dozens of journals, all sorts of journals. These are only a few of them, the ones that I have written like in the last 20 years. Some are not totally filled in. As you can see, I use small ones. I use even notebooks that I turned into journals. Stuff that could be used for kitchen recipes. I didn't even know I had that there. That's me as a little girl. And obviously, I love to write in all sorts of different colors. I used to read my entries a lot until the moment that I realized that it was more like a pity party. See, I used journaling to heal from my various depression episodes, and I thought it was about time for me to transform all those entries, at least in one of my journals, into something that would bring me joy. So I took one of them and decided not to block out all the pages, but to transform it into something that would leave a trace of the past, which are my writings. And for that, I decided to use the gel resist technique on rice paper so that you can see that I've glued that down, but you can still see that there are writings behind. I love this one. This is so beautiful. So in a way, it's not me denying what happened in the past or what I've written in the past, but just putting a veil of memory onto it. And I did this with a technique that I'm going to show you now, the gel resist technique, using stencils and clear tar gel on rice paper, so that when you glue it down, it gives that beautiful, beautiful veil of transparency. I wanted to show you how it looks like when you're ready to glue those papers down in your journal. So these are bits and pieces that I did and that I absolutely love. They are gorgeous pieces to add to any journal actually, but especially for this, since I want to keep the words visible, but not in a way that I would be able to read my sentences again. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. And I thought that the best symbol of, transforming a journal, especially one like this, would be to use the metaphor of the butterfly. So I'm going to show you how you can make these, and I'll start with the supplies that you need. If you decide to work in one of your journals, that's going to be your substrate, one of your pages. But obviously this technique, the gel resist technique, you can use on any type of written surface. The idea is that you want to preserve transparency on the background that you're going to use. So, rice paper. I love using rice paper. These are really nice, sturdy paper, but you can certainly use any type of tissue paper that works just as fine. It's a bit more fragile, but the results are identical. And of course, you will need your preferred StencilGirl Stencils. I can tell you that I use that technique with probably all the stash of stencil from Stencil Girls that I have. Then you will need clear tar gel. So this is clear tar gel from Golden. I've got a huge jar because I use a lot of it. And to apply the clear tar gel, you need a palette knife, a bunch of your favorite colors. I'm using Golden Fluid Acrylics. This is only a few of the colors that I'm going to use, but just go for whatever color you like. To glue the rice paper or the tissue paper down on your journal, you will need gloss medium with a brush that you dedicate only for gluing. You will also need a regular brush, a black pen. This is a Pitt pen from Faber-Castell to draw the contour of your butterfly. You will need a Posca white pen if you want to add some white details on the wings, a regular pencil, scissors, kitchen paper, and a bucket of water because you will want to put your stencils in the water and water for your brush, obviously. And that's about it. Before we get started, I want to have a quick word about the journal page you're going to glue your paper on. There might be an issue with the ink that you use to write your journal with. It could either disappear, like here, because of the glue that I used and probably the quality of the ink that I use in my fountain pen. Another issue that you might have is that the ink bleeds and smudges, like here. So this was the first test that I did with gluing down my gel resist paper. And the ink that I had written on the page kind of bled and smudged. I left it like that because anyways, I mean, there's no way I can read what I had written, but it was just to show you that you might want to try before you start gluing down papers. See, like here, it has disappeared a little bit, and here it seems that it's okay. So this was also with a fountain pen, but it kind of stayed. Just a bit of a warning, just make sure that if you don't want to have the ink that is smudged beneath your paper, just make a little bit of a test. If you don't want to do that in your journal and you want to do that on ordinary paper, you can also do this, which is the same technique, but I have glued those papers on an old book page, so you can see the words peeking through the gel on the paper. And of course, you don't have that kind of issue of the ink smudging beneath your paper. That is said, let's begin with our gel resist. So the first thing that you want to do is to choose your stencils. And that's probably the most difficult thing to do because you don't want to choose right. They're also beautiful. And I have to tell you a little secret. I think I did use them all to create some gel resist papers with them. So I'm just going to show you the ones that are here. This is the MB Mix Marks 4 Up. As you can see, this is there. This one has been used here. And this part here has been used there. That's one. This is another one that I use a lot. It's the Runes stencil. I think it gives so many beautiful
shapes. That's the one that I used in my butterfly here. So that's one. And here, that's the tropical floral stencil. Probably like this, right? It's also one that I use a lot. And what else? Yeah, so I showed you that one. This one might have been, that's the abstract composition backbone mask, and part of it is still here. You know, there are so many you could use. See, for example, that one, that's the rock wool stencil. This one is the Picasso words. Isn't that beautiful? Today, I'm going to use this one, the Rooted in Nature Small Monarch, which is quite appropriate to make a butterfly. And I will use this one too, which is the abstract composition backbones, so that you can actually see what I'm doing. And the page that I'm going to use is this one. So we're going to make a spread with butterfly on here. All right, so I have picked up my small Monarch stencil, and I'm going to apply a thick layer of clear tar gel using my palette knife. So go and take a scoop, big large scoop on the back of my palette knife, and then I just gently put it down on the stencil, and I spread it in a gentle way all over the stencil. I repeat that as long as my stencil is not totally covered. A bit like when you are putting some peanut butter on your bread and you want every inch of your bread slice to be covered with that delicious peanut butter. At least if you like peanut butter, it can be chocolate spread. So you see that I'm not even pushing through. It's just gently layering and making sure that the gel is filling every hole of the stencil. I'm not scraping at this stage. Just want to create very, very thick layer of gel, because I know that that thickness is what is going to create that beautiful translucent pattern. The thicker the layer is, the more chance it has to seep through the paper. That's it. That is covered. If you have some air bubbles peeping out, don't worry about that. Once you've taken out the stencil, you will be able to burst those air bubbles with a pin. Now you lift the stencil up, gently removing it. And then what I do, because there's still a lot of gel on my stencil, I put it on the side besides the first one. And I'm going to scrape what's left on the stencil. But first I'm going to burst that bubble here. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, there's still a lot of gel on the stencil, and this time, instead of putting more gel on the stencil, I will just scrape what's left on the stencil and push it through the holes. Forgot to tell you that what you want to check before starting with your gel resist is that your paper is free from any dust or hair. Speaking of experience, because at the moment I've got 2 cats in the same room, and they kind of like to come on the table and see what I'm doing, which is not always very welcome. because of course they leave hair, and once hair is trapped in your gel, that becomes a bit tricky to get it out. Here the idea is just to scrape what's left of the gel of the stencil, push it through the holes, and making sure that your holes are covered. Now, I can tell that I still have a lot of gel on my stencil, and I will repeat the operation here to make sure that I've taken everything I can off the stencil. Why am I doing this? Because it's very interesting to get different thickness of gel on your paper. Like, for example, here I used the abstract composition stencil. This one, you can see on the left, the layer of gel was very, very thick because it's nearly transparent. And then on the right, escape the stencil, and the layer is thinner, which means that it's less transparent, and it will give really interesting variation of the same pattern when we're going to glue that down on our journal page. So I'm going to do this off camera, and I will let everything dry, preferably overnight, because of the thickness of the gel. I want to make sure that it's totally dry, and overnight is the best solution. Meanwhile, you can start working on your butterfly shape. I'm going to show you how I did this one, because for some of you, it might not be that easy to draw a butterfly. So what I did is I went on Pinterest and I copied a silhouette of a butterfly on a piece of paper. And then I cut the wings out. This is the template that I used. It's just because it's making sure for me that my wings are totally the same size. So let's imagine you have your silhouette that you've taken out from Pinterest, and you're going to start by drawing the body, which is a circle and some kind of a oblong shape. This is to give you some reference for the size of the wings. And now I am going to draw the upper wing, and then the other one. This could have been more like this. You can do that because you won't be using those drawings anyway as such. It's just a template for a cutout for your rice paper. And I don't even bother to draw the other half of my butterfly because I'm going to use the same cutouts as a reverse pattern to cut my rice paper. So let's do that. You don't need anything more complicated than this because the pattern of your butterfly, you know how beautiful those wings can be when you look closer. You don't want to get a detailed drawing of what you want to have because it's the pattern of the stencil that is going to give you the interest in your painting. And that's why I'm using all the stencils that I have when I'm creating those gel resists. I love that so much. So here I am with my half butterfly. This is ready for when I will need them to put on my rice paper. Now that the rice paper is dried with the clear tar gel, this is what we get. It's so gorgeous. So remember we used the small Monarch stencil, and on the left this is the part where we applied a very thick layer of clear tar gel, and this is where we scraped the stencil with what was left of the gel on the stencil. So this is very, very thick and very transparent, and this is thin and less transparent, and that's what's going to make it interesting to use both. Now, I've made lots of other clear tar gel resists
because I love to have the choice of the papers that I'm going to use. So this one, I'm going to put that away. This one is the one with the small abstraction stencil. You can see, same thing. This is with the thick layer of clear gel, and this is with the thinner layer where I scraped the stencil. I also did some on tissue paper. So, as I said, tissue paper is a lot thinner than rice paper, and it works just as well. And this is with the room stencil, which is the one that I used here. I'm not even sure that we're going to use them all, but as I said, I like to have the choice when I'm creating. This one is the Soulful Scribbles stencil, and I think that's going to be very interesting to use because we could, cut out some parts of the wings in those areas with those patterns, and that's, I think, is going to be very interesting. And now is the moment that we are going to paint those papers so that we get bits and pieces of different patterns on rice paper in different colors. Taking my rice paper with the small Monarch pattern, my brush, my palette, and some paints. I'm going to start with a warm palette with magenta, Indian yellow, and probably some Queen Nickelisa gold, and maybe a little bit of gold. And when I'm at this stage of the process, what I do is to put some kitchen paper towel beneath the paper that I'm going to paint, because I'm going to use a lot of water and I really want the kitchen paper to absorb the extra paint. And I will also get one extra paper towel ready, and I'll tell you why straight away. Let us start with putting my paints on the side, a little bit of each. I love Indian yellow. This is one of my preferred colors. And this is cadmium orange. That's from Schminker. This is acrylic ink. And a bit of yellow. There we go. Now, I use a lot of water on the brush. I just get started with the lighter color, which is here yellow. And just brush it over. And as you can see, the rice paper is absorbing straight away the color that I'm putting on it. And I just go on like that, just putting paint on paper. Now it's also interesting to paint the areas of your rice paper that hasn't have any kind of pattern, because those are pieces that you will be able to use as collage anyways. Now, this is the part with the second part of the clear gel. Now, what I'm doing before the paint dries, I'm taking my kitchen towel and I just rub gently to wipe off the excess of paint on the areas where I have the clear gel resist. And this is where you now get a beautiful resist that we will be able to use in our collage later on. I'm going to do the same on the left, and you can kind of vary the intensity of your colors and paints by adding less water to your brush or more water if you want something paler. I'm just making sure that my rice paper is nicely covered with paint all over, because as I said, all those pieces of paper will be useful for me for collage in my next projects. So again, I'm taking my paper towel and gently wiping off the excess paint on the gel. It's so nice and delicate. And that's it. So now I'm going to let that dry on the side. It's going to dry pretty quickly, like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. It gives us time to paint the other one. The other one, I'm going to use a different color palette. Therefore, I'm going to put another layer of paper towel. That's the pattern that I'm going to paint now. This time I want to make something with greens. So I'm going to use green gold and phthalo turquoise. Same thing. I start with the lightest color, which is green gold. Oh my god! I came with some magenta. I'm not sure that's a happy accident, but what if? Not sure. No. All right, so you see, it's never lost. You can always get around what you think is a mistake. Now, instead of keeping that green gold, I'm going to add a bit of yellow, more or less in the same palette. And again, coming with some paper towel. This is going to be very different. And the last one I want to paint is the one with the Soulful Scribbles. What about my color palette? I'll probably stick with the magenta. This is on tissue paper, so you can see it's a lot thinner. But the result is just as nice. As I said, it's probably a bit more fragile to use. See how the pattern shows up so nicely. Just want something a bit bolder here. Paper towel and gently wiping off the excess paint. Gently, because the tissue paper is more fragile than rice paper, so you just do this really gently and you leave it to dry. All my rice papers have now dried with the clear tar gem showing through the paper, which is totally amazing. I am so in love with those papers. Look at that. This is with the small Monarch stencil. That's the one that went a bit sideways color-wise, the one with the abstract composition stencil. And then, of course, as always, I went a bit overboard and I painted some more. Again, the small Monarch stencil in cool colors. That's the half moon stencil. Blue and blue, it's really gorgeous. This one was made with the Holmes stencil. Look at that, that's gorgeous. That's the MB Makes Marks. And this one is the large begonia stencil. Absolutely gorgeous. So now the thing is to decide which one of those papers I'm going to use to create my butterfly. So remember we had cut out the wings of our butterfly, and I will look for the best color combination that I would love to have. I want to use those patterns. I think for the wings it's really perfect. So decide. Okay, let's go for it, because otherwise I'm still here for another hour trying to decide what to use. Okay, so now I kind of want this as the upper part of my butterfly and this as the lower wings of my butterfly, meaning that I will use that one there and this one here. What I'm going to do now is to draw the contour of my template. To do that, I will turn it around and draw that on the back of the paper. Let's go. So I'm just with my graphite pencil drawing around the shape, which is basically one of the lower wings of the butterfly. And so that's one, right? We can see that here. I need to have the same one but reverse. So I'm turning my template around to kind of mirror the shape, and I'm placing it just side by side with the other one. And of course, I mean, you can draw like freehand directly on the rice paper if you feel comfortable with drawing freehand. I just find that it's easy when you have a template because you can replicate exactly the same shapes and sizes. I'm now going to cut that shape here. So those are my two lower wings, and now I'm going to do the same with this part of the butterfly. So these are the wings, upper wings, lower wings. Right, so now check where on your page you want your butterfly to appear, and that could be like this. Just to make sure that I position the wings in an appropriate way, I make the shape of the butterfly's body so that it gives me a reference point for how to position my collage pieces. And now I'm gonna use the gloss medium as a glue for my rice paper and tissue paper. Why am I using gloss medium? When you glue down your rice paper or tissue paper with gloss medium, it makes it even more translucent once it's dry. Technically, you could use any kind of glue or matte medium or even a glue stick, but with gloss medium, it's some kind of an assurance that you are going to add a translucent layer to your collage. And since that's exactly what I want, because I want the words to peek through the cutouts, I'm going to use gloss medium. I've got my old brush and I'll start with this one. So how do I do that? Just generously applying a layer of gloss medium. I add some gloss medium on top of the piece that just glued down. Just play around with my finger to make sure I get rid of the wrinkles. And then I just need to wait for the glue to dry before I draw the body and the details on the wing. Okay, the collage is dry, and now is the moment that we finish the butterfly body and add details to the wing, like what we have here, to make the wings stand out and maybe add some more embellishment. So for this step of the process, I'm going to use two pens. One is a brush pen from Faber-Castell, a Pitt artist pen brush, black, and one Unipin fine liner. It's 0.2 thickness for the nib. Both are waterproof pens. So what I'm gonna do first is to start with the outline of the body. I do the same, the outline of the wings. This is just to give me a reference for the details that I will be adding. So now I'm going to thicken the lines that I just drew to put some depth in the pattern. In some place I'm exaggerating the shape. Here there's no right or wrong. It's just like adding details that can be totally out of your imagination. And again, if you don't feel at ease about this, get some inspiration on Pinterest. The whole process of creating details that will bring your butterfly to life, actually. I want to add one of those white spots, which I am first drawing in black. And then I'm gonna take my white Posca paint marker to fill that in. And I'm going to add some other cute little dots. That's when you just let your imagination run wild.
So now this one is finished, and you can see that all these beautiful transparent areas are now covering my journal entry. I really love this. I'm going to do the same with the other one. And there they are, those two beautiful butterflies that I wanted to create to transform my journal pages. By using this gel resist technique on rice paper, I can use my pages without denying what I have lived at the time that I wrote those pages. And you can see from close that the words are peeking through, but you can hardly read what I have written. I hope you enjoyed this gel resist technique. This is it, guys. I hope you loved it, and hope to see you soon.